Evolution of software applications. Hi everybody. In this presentation I'll be discussing the evolution of software applications, focusing on command line interface, how it grew into the GUI, and then a bunch of killer apps that have developed and influenced the way computers have developed over the years. Search engines, VisiCalc, web browsers, presentation software, email, and social networking applications. But to start with, let's look at a CLI. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into Documents folder first and then a DOS window. So now we're looking at a command line interface. And this is my Documents folder. So when I type dir, that's a command from the command line, you'll see that the folders that appear, these folders here, are the same as these folders here. And so I can create a folder using a DOS command, md test. And straight away, see, there it is. It appeared in the folder. It's exactly the same as if I was to create a new folder through the GUI and call it new test folder 2. You'll see that when I take a dir, directory listing of this folder, test folder 2 is there. Okay, so I can also change folders into the test folder, and there's nothing in there. So what a surprise, nothing in there. So I can create a new document called hi. And now when I take a directory listing, there it is, my folder called hi. So I can do more with my command line. If I know the file path, I can launch programs. Okay, so what I've done there, I've done a bit of a cheat. I know there's only one folder called program files, and so therefore if it's in the right spot, and I think that's going to work, yep. Now I don't know, then you can tab and it will give you the name of the folder. Now I don't know what's in here. Office 16 I think is where I need to go. If I'm right, it's going to be in the root folder. No. dir, what's in here? Ooh, I'm in the wrong place. So we'll go back a level. It's root here. And then Office 16, I think. And this is showing all the files in that folder. There's a few of them, but one of them is called WinWord. And what that's going to do is launch Microsoft Word. That is exactly the same as if I had have gone through the Start menu and clicked on the Word icon. And that shows you a quick difference actually between a command line interface and a GUI. The command line interface, you need to know the commands to type. And you saw when I made mistakes, it was unforgiving. It just said error. Didn't say this cannot be found or you're in the wrong place. It just said error, which is a bit tough. Okay, so I'm going to zip through the rest of this slide because we don't need to worry about it now. Windows and Linux both run on command lines. To some extent, so does the Mac OS, but more inclined to be a graphic user interface. Here is a command line version, beg pardon, of the original Windows version, or the second version of Windows version 1.01 from 1985. Everything is running through a DOS command prompt, but there's a whole bunch of Windows running with different files and different batch files running. So it's getting back into the real old days. What we have now is, of course, a graphic user interface, and the next slide should tell us more about that. So there's a graphic user interface. It makes it easy to navigate where you're going to see what you're doing, so that when you are using a GUI, it works a whole lot more easily. You can make mistakes because you have icons on a screen to click on, and it will probably throw errors to you. So the GUI first became used in about 1973 with the Alto computer. Then in 1980, Three Rivers Computer Corporation introduced the PERC ICI, which is the first commercially produced PC with a GUI. In 1981, Xerox was the first system to incorporate different technologies that made the graphics user interface a little more user-friendly. In 1983, Apple Lisa came with a GUI as well, and you can see it's evolved more from the previous versions. It's nowhere near what we see today, but it is more advanced than the Alto version or even the Xerox version. VisiCalc was an early personal software publisher, and again it's using graphics software within reason. Then there was Windows 1, which came out in 1985. In the previous slide you saw a picture of that. In January 1984 though, Apple revolutionised personal computers by introducing the Macintosh, and it's not too much to say that Macintosh did revolutionise the PC market, because it had a mouse, it had a Windows system, a desktop system, it had logical structures of files and folders. It was a very, very advanced operating system for its day. In June of the same year, Windows System X was announced, which was close to, but not really, Microsoft Windows. In September, the Digital Research Group announced GEM, which again looks a lot like the current Windows operating system, and it was close to it. Windows 95 was released in August 1995, and it was probably the first really commercially massively successful Windows operating system, because it incorporated an easy GUI and a powerful start menu, and that very powerful start menu is really important to see. Because when you clicked on start, everything was there, and we take that for granted these days. And then Windows XP was actually a true, genuine graphic user interface operating system. It replaced the command line to be the entirety of the operating system. So Windows 2000 and XP were the first time Windows wasn't a graphic user interface for a command line. It was the operating system. Now let's look at search engines. Search engines were developed to index websites based on content, metadata, and popularity. They became important early on when it was impossible to know what was available nor where to find it. The search engine was created by American University student Alan Emtage in 1990, who was still studying at McGill University. Archie was his web crawler, or search engine, was short for archives, and it had a list of all the file transport protocol servers it could find. It had some options such as downloading files, and this would serve to be more convenient to people who otherwise relied on word of mouth. But search engines, thankfully, evolved. In 1990, so we had Archie. Then in 1994, a businessman, David Philo, and a computer programmer, Jerry Yang, combined to create the first search engine that had a collection of web pages around the globe, and this system was Yahoo. In 1994, Sergey Brin and Larry Page developed Backrub, which is the predecessor to Google. In fact, Google was launched 2 years later and utilized backlinks for searches, and quickly gained popularity and reliability due to the amount of people using the site. So 1998 was Google's official launch. In 2000, the search engine Tioma was bought out by AskG for a lot of money before they were starting to go bankrupt, and that's become what is known now as ask.com. Moving forward, 2004, Microsoft released their brand new search engine, MSN, which was created to keep up with competitive pre-existing search engines. They needed to innovate more than Google, and what MSN did was make their search engines work for Microsoft products. Then Google introduced the Universal Search in 2007, which added new features. And if you look at the link, you'll see that the Universal Search has not just web results, but news, videos, images, and a whole bunch more. In response to the Universal Search, in 2009, MSN was rebranded as Bing, and again is used to directly link people to Microsoft and its products. Google has constantly updated and developed their search engine, and whilst their web page doesn't change much, the back-end updates that they do are important 2010, Google introduced the caffeine update, which improved the speed of refresh results by quite significant amounts. In 2014, Firefox used Bing as its default search engine. In 2016 and 17, Google updated their search engine again against spam against spam and malware through the Fred and Possum updates. So you see, software evolution and search engine evolution has been quite rapid, and each new development pushes the other developers to improve their products. Now let's go back in time and talk about the first real killer app for the world, VisiCalc. VisiCalc was the first spreadsheet program. It was developed in the public and released to the public in 1979, running on an Apple II computer, and made the Apple II a must-have business tool. VisiCalc introduced a new level of use in application software. The developers made this software while they were master students of business administration at Harvard Business School. And the important thing that it did, it consisted of 254 rows and 63 columns, which therefore meant it had that many times that many cells. Each cell could be mathematically linked to each other cell, which meant you could do a lot of accounting stuff much, much, much faster than if you had ledger books. And that's why VisiCalc became a real killer app for the internet, or for personal computers. Now, along with VisiCalc as a killer app for computers and search engines as a killer app as developing toys for the internet, web browsers also have developed significantly. The World Wide Web was actually developed in 1990 by Tim Berners-Lee, who was a computer scientist and analyst working at the European Centre for Nuclear Research, CERN. It came about because CERN had many computer networks that could not easily share information between them because each network used different protocols. With the World Wide Web, Berners-Lee developed the first browser, Nexus. The National Centre for Supercomputing Applications, NCSA, introduced Mosaic, which quickly became the web browser of choice because it could browse the internet. After NCSA, Netscape Navigator, and then Internet Explorer. In 2003, Apple introduced the Mac. In 2004, the web browser of choice around the world was Firefox. Moving on, in 2008, Google Chrome came along, and it was using 65% or so of the world's computer software web browsers pretty quickly. In this day and age, once again, Chrome is still the dominant web browser. Nearly 60% of the world uses it, followed by Safari, which is all the Mac users, with 13%, and combined Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer have 7%. Firefox isn't well used around the world, which is a bit sad because it is a good, it is a good processor, a good browser. So here we have Chrome, Safari, Edge, Internet Explorer. Email is another one of these applications that has driven the development of personal computers. Email is a communication protocol, similar to written letters, with the benefit and detraction of being instantaneous. You hit send and your email is sent. Whereas if you're doing an old school letter, you send by walking down to the post office and putting it in a letterbox, and a day or two later it arrives. Email uses SMTP and POP protocols to send and receive messages. Its purpose in this part of the software design syllabus is because, like email and VisiCalc and web browsers, it is considered to be one of the killer apps to help popularize computers in general. Now, presentation software has developed enormously over the years. Presentation software is a package designed to display information in the form of a slideshow like you're seeing now, stringing together text, images, audio, and video. Beginning in 1960, Ted Nelson came up with the idea of files being linked in a non-linear fashion. He coined the term hypertext and hypermedia. In 1979, the first presentations that we are more or less familiar with were released. It was called Bruno, developed by HP, but it was only for commercial use. In 1982, VCN, ExecuVision, became available for PC. Again, you can see it's looking more like PowerPoint. In 1987, we got the first version of PowerPoint. In 1997, PowerPoint was pretty much the standard, and slides could go in any order, and you could include clip art, and they became quite useful. 2000, yep. And now look at PowerPoint for 2019. There's 3D objects, you can embed video, you can embed audio. They are deeply powerful tools. You can have 3D modeling, you can morph, draw, anything that you think you can think about doing, as chances are PowerPoint can do it for you. Moving on to the final area that we should consider when it comes to the evolution of software, social networking applications. These are applications aimed at building online communities of people who share interests and activities, or who are interested in exploring the interests and activities of others. Social networking is usually done through instant messaging, email, social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, when we were all young, MySpace. So let's just quickly run through the history of this. 1971 saw the first emails being sent. 2004 saw the launch of Facebook. In between those was Friends, schools apps, websites, and MySpace. But they didn't go very well. 2004 is probably a good starting point. Now we have YouTube launched in 2005. In 2006 saw the release of Twitter. In 2010 saw the release of Instagram. In 2011 saw the development of Snapchat. The term selfie was coined and named Word of the Year in 2013, as one does. And it's worth noting now that the number of users of Facebook is just over 2 billion, which is almost 1 in 3 people in the world. So social networking is definitely one of the big killer apps on our internet, or in our world, that has driven the development of computers, handheld devices, phones, very much so. So thanks for watching.